AFC North Talk, the roundtable that features the great Sonny, my man Quincy Carrier, Tony Sereno, unfortunately, and me, Ace Boogie, as well. So glad to hear from you guys. Looking forward to week one. Today, we're going to start things off with some previews. So, obviously, all of us have different matchups week one. And we're going to go ahead and bring in my guy Tony right now. But we're going to start off with the Browns and the Ravens. And Sonny, let's start off with you. Let's get these takes about this Ravens Browns matchup week one. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys are going to say facing off against each other.
Look, I think this is going to be a good game. I think it's something when you see some fans, they get too emotional. Even I said this before, even when the Browns were 0-16, 1-15, and we were making the playoffs, or we're battling for making the playoffs. The Browns-Ravens games are never easy. It's never easy with the Bengals. It's never easy with the Steelers. It's never easy with the Browns. Doesn't matter the record. Okay, saying that, I think this game for the Ravens, it came out in a good week. It's a challenging game, so you can start yourself as with a good challenge. Also, as I said throughout the offseason, teams that bring a new system, I think they might struggle at the beginning. That's my opinion, as they're putting a new system and they didn't have preseason. Again, I think it was one of the worst things that the NFL did coming out of the year. But also, if we go back, and I'll throw more of this later, of last year's week 4, and was it week 10-ish, whatever it was?
16 was the second game?
Was it 16?
Yeah, it was week 16.
Yeah, it was. Okay, so 16-4. The Ravens defense, not necessarily the offense. The offense personnel was fairly similar, but the defense was way different. We had our nose tackle, our linebacking core was different. Our cornerback was almost complete, as we actually had Tavon Young now, but the defense was very different, and the outcome was very different. So I think the Ravens have an advantage in this game. Not saying it's going to be an easy one, but I think the Ravens will have an advantage. But I would love to hear from Quincy.
I have a very even-tempered, even-keel take on this game. I am not going to get out of control. I am not going to get overexcited. I am not going to scream, and I am going to keep my shirt on for the entire duration of my take here on this show. So I do think this is going to be a good game. I think there are some holes that the Browns can exploit in this Ravens defense, particularly their youth at linebacker and their youth at free safety. Well, inexperience at free safety, because Deshaun Elliott's not necessarily a rookie. He just has the same amount of playing time as somebody who would essentially be discussed as a rookie would be. So there's going to be some holes there that you could take advantage of with the tight ends. You get the tight ends going, you get the run game open, and then who knows what happens here. Big question mark for Cleveland is going to be at defense. Are they going to be able to do enough? They're not going to shut down Baltimore. They're not going to keep them under 21 points by any means, but are they going to be able to do enough to get key stops here and there, or maybe force a turnover that might be able to give the Browns an advantage? With Myles Garrett there, I don't think it's ridiculous to think that can happen, but if Myles Garrett does not have a great day, well, then it becomes a little bit ridiculous to think that can happen. So, there's a lot of things that can go right and a lot of things that can go wrong for this game. Me personally, I have a solid feeling about this game ever since it was announced. I think the Browns are going to show up to play here. I think they're going to have a good game, and I think they might have a chance to beat Baltimore this week. But yeah, I'm excited for this matchup, and I think it's going to be a great test for both teams. Baltimore coming off that 14-2 season, all that hype that they have now about, will they make the Super Bowl? Are they going to live up to it? And then the Browns, trying to bounce back from one of the more disappointing seasons in Browns franchise history, which is hard to imagine happened.
So it's funny because, Max Kelleher and our guy over there, Stephen A, said today the Ravens will not win with Lamar Jackson a Super Bowl. And then in football, NFL Network, somebody said the Ravens cannot even make the playoffs this year. So, I think you see a lot of hot takes like that
You found my alt account.
Yeah. I forgot the guy's name. But anyway, look, I think this favors the Ravens, the matchup. I think Hooper was a great addition for the Browns, but I think Jimmy Smith has been working on just putting himself in the slot for man-to-man against tight ends, right? Big physical corner. We have the other two corners on the outside, Humphrey and then Peters. And then, yes, I think the Browns, and I was talking with Quincy this yesterday, if they don't go deep a couple of times, says Elliott, I don't know what they're doing. The Browns should be doing two things: testing Elliott in the deep, and then putting, in my opinion, carrying Hunt and try to force one-on-one with one of the linebackers like Queen and see how he reacts against a veteran savvy running back. But our D-line is really good and healthy, so we're going to test Wills. We're going to test the center, which I know is a little bit inexperienced. Our corners are ready. Again, those matches should be great within the corners and wide receivers because the Browns have one of the best receiving corps in the league. We have one of the best corners in the league, so that matchup should be great. And on the other side, if we flip it, our offense, that's the thing. What I see right now, I see our defense be able to contain. I'm not going to say shut down. I actually think at least 2 touchdowns the Browns will score. But I don't see how the Browns defense can contain the Ravens offense. And I have the Ravens winning by a good mark, not a blowout. But, hey, I think it's going to be fun. But I think first half will be tight because, it's going to be the first game. There hasn't been a preseason. Everybody's going to be rusty. As the second half moves, you're going to see some margin being open and the Ravens just holding that margin in.
All right. Are you guys taking me and Tony's take on this game as well?
This is all of them, man.
Well, Tony, I'll go ahead and shift it off to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with both breakdowns here. I think both guys did a good job of kind of, talking about where this matchup is going to be won. I think on the Ravens side, you want to test the Browns linebacking core because that's, I think, where all the question marks are going to be. And look, the Ravens are going to do that naturally just by their scheme, right? They have a lot of misdirection that they're going to bring into it. So they're already, they're not going to have to change schematically to say, hey, we need to attack BJ Goodson, right? We need to attack Taki. They're just going to do that naturally. The same thing with with what they're going to bring in the running game. So I think that's the big question mark for me with the Browns is like, can those guys hold up? Can they stay in their in position to make the plays? Because if not, and you talked about this, Sonny, that second game that these two teams played last year, I mean the Ravens basically couldn't be stopped. I mean you look at the drive chart in that game, and I know they didn't score in the first couple of drives, but they were moving the ball, and once they did get going, I mean the Ravens offense could not be stopped in that game. So I agree with you on that, Sonny. It's like I do look at this Ravens team like how are they gonna be slowed down by this Browns team? I look over at the Browns offense though, and I do think without Earl Thomas and with having to play Deshaun Elliott right now, I look at the same thing with that Ravens linebacking core with a guy like Patrick Queen in there, like you talked about. I'm wondering, does Stefanski want to line this thing up in a 2 tight end set, run more play action, run this thing through Nick Chubb, but try to get some play action in there and try to work the seams. Even look, one thing that was interesting to me about this matchup a year ago is that Odell didn't really have great games in either game, but Jarvis Landry did. Jarvis Landry went off in the first game. And in the second game, I think he had like 70, 80 yards, not a bad game by any stretch. If I'm Stefanski in this one, I want to try and get Odell into some one-on-one matchups using some play action and say, look, Odell, you got to go out there and you got to beat Marlon Humphrey or if it's Peters, whoever it is that lines up against him. I think there are some matchups here, certainly for the Browns to move the ball offensively. I question whether the Browns can stop the Ravens, but I think the Browns are certainly more than capable of putting up big points in here. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the final score of this game, regardless of winner, were something like 27-24 or 30-33, something like that, right? If we had a higher scoring game in this one, wouldn't be surprising to me at all.
Yeah, for me, I think Vegas has this as Ravens by 7.5 points. I think it's going to be a lot closer than that. And the reason why I think is that the Browns need to do what the Titans did against the Ravens. You have to ride your running backs, and you have 2 great ones in Nick Chubb as well as Kareem Hunt. I think with them using their running backs, that's going to help their defense out because obviously they do have issues at the linebacker position. We know that. However, when you look at the cornerback position, there's going to be a good matchup there with the Browns corner going against Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. They don't really have much of an offensive weapon in terms of the receiver position, but they do with Mark Andrews. So I think Mark Andrews presents a problem. Obviously, Lamar Jackson presents a problem, Mark Ingram. But the way that you can combat that is by keeping Lamar Jackson off of the field by running the ball. And I think that that's what is going to be key for the Browns, especially with getting Baker comfortable. I mean, he's going against one of the toughest defenses and secondaries in football his first week. The best way that you can help him out is give him a run game to help support him and support that team. So with that being said, I think that this will be a lot closer than people are thinking. I think, like Tony said, I could see this being 27-24. I do have to give the hat to the Ravens just because of based off of what we've seen last season. But I think that this will be a close game. I think that it's not out of the question that the Browns could initially pull off a surprise win here. This could be something where the Ravens are a little drunk from the Titans game, have got it in their head, and they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, and the Browns squeak away with the win. But if I had to be real, I think it's 27-24 Ravens over the Browns.
Hey, one other thing I want to touch on real quick, and I think, Quincy, you talked about this. That first game last year, Myles Garrett played. The second game, he did not. And in that first game, they sacked Lamar Jackson, I think, 3 or 4 times. In the second game, they didn't touch Lamar Jackson in that game. And I think that's a big key in this game as well, is if they can get some pressure on Lamar, especially with Garrett, that can change the tenor of things a little bit. You get a turnover out of that. And that happened in the first game. You go back and watch that one. So that can be a big key in this as well. I think that's something we shouldn't overlook, because while, yes, the Ravens offense in that second game was lights out, they were going up against a team without their best player defensively. That player will be playing on Sunday, and it's something the Ravens are going to have to be watching out for on every down.
Definitely an X factor for sure, because Myles Garrett against Lamar Jackson, that's must-see TV. Can he get to Lamar Jackson and slow him down? He's definitely the X factor, as Tony pointed out. Like I said, I don't mean to just try to say that the Ravens are going to blow these guys out of the water. This is going to be a good game, and with my game coming on at 4, I'm definitely going to be tuned in watching what's going on with this game to get an eye on the division for sure.
Yeah, this will be TV1 for me for sure.
Quincy, what are your score prediction, bro?
I think it's going to be – I'm going to go 26 because Austin Cybert's going to miss an extra point. 26-21 Browns.
All right.
Yeah, I have the game actually closer to the fourth or the second game. I have us scoring about 31 points and 19 for the Browns because your boy's going to miss an extra point. I agree with that. So and for me, there's a lot of matchups that I'm very interested in this game. Like if you're a football, like if obviously me and Quincy are watching the game, not only as YouTubers, but also as fans. But if you are part of the AFC North community and you want to see good matchup, Stanley and Miles should be a good matchup. Hollywood and Ward should be a good matchup. Again, I think the Browns should put Hunt and try to exploit Queen. That should be a matchup to watch, right? Odell versus Humphrey. Last year, that was a great matchup. Hooper against Jimmy Smith. Jarvis against Peters. There's going to be a lot of good matchups for, yes, Odell, Lamar, how they're playing in year 3. A lot of good matchups. This should be a good game. Again, if you're not a Browns and Ravens, right? Because obviously if you're a Brown Raven, you're hyped because those are your teams. But if you take the fan base out, if you're just a Bengals or Steelers fan, still, it should be a great matchup just to watch. There's a lot of elements in this matchup. It should be just a great football game.
And one thing I want to add, if you're looking for 3 key players for the Browns in order to win this game, they're going to have to step up and have good games. We know about Nick Chubb. We know that Odell's there. We know that, Jarvis Landry there. But I think there are 2 players with 2 positions that actually had some success in both Ravens game. If you look at the tight end position, Ricky Seals-Jones, not a lot of people talk about it. He had 3 receptions for 86 yards. Now, Ricky Seals-Jones, not that great of a tight end. He's a good receiving tight end, but he's not Austin Hooper by any means. So I would expect that him and Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant, if the Browns win this game, to be decent contributors and put up some decent numbers there, because again, that's a hole you can hit on this Ravens team. And another area where if you watch the first half of that second Ravens game, the Ravens had a little bit of an issue stopping was Kareem Hunt specifically as a receiver out there. Mm-hmm. That's going to be interesting. Kareem Hunt just signed a nice new deal, staying in Cleveland for the cheap, and I think they might be able to get their money's worth in this week 1 game against Baltimore by trying to hit them on a lot of angle routes and really trying to test this linebacking coverage and man. Yeah,
definitely. So that brings up, that's our wrap up for Browns Ravens. Next, we're going to move to the next one because I think this one is pretty easy here. A little softball that was laid up for Tony here with Giants and Steelers week 1. Quincy, I'm going to ask for your take on how you see this game going and what the matchups are.
D Jones Nation, baby. Yeah, I'm a Jones bro. No, stop. Let's come on. Let's not be ridiculous here. Look, everybody on this channel and anybody who watches my channel knows I'm not really high on this Steelers team. But you know what I'm less high on? the New York Giants. I don't know how this became a Monday night opening day matchup, but hey, we're going to get it. And I don't think this is going to be pleasant football to watch because I don't know if both offenses are going to necessarily look great in this opening. Yeah. We know how Ben looks, like regardless of what I think he's going to look like for the rest of the season. We know how Ben tends to look in national TV opening games. It's not his forte. But, in the last few years. No,
last year was bad. Yeah.
But, it's going to be an interesting game here. Like, of course, the Giants can theoretically run the ball, but, like, can they? Against a team that's going to key in on that, a good defense that's going to be able to key in on that. And your biggest threat is Daniel Jones throwing the who? Like, remind me of their wide receivers. I don't think they have one I would necessarily game plan for. And then on defense, I'm not really impressed with what the Giants have there. Their best corner is out the NFL. So, bad luck there. Just not a great team. This is a 4-12 team I think they're playing, and I think the Steelers are going to be able to beat them, and they should be able to beat them handedly, in my opinion.
All right, so let's kick it to Sonny. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think somebody that makes schedules is a Steelers fan because this is one of the best ways you can start a season. You're like, okay, their quarterback is coming from major injury. What is one of the most cakewalk teams that they're playing against? Mm-hmm. Let's put that on week 1 so they can have like a semi welcome, but not really because that team over there in New York is. I think part of the Jacksonville also tanking, right? Like right now, other than Saquon Barkley, and Jones has some nice things. But the problem is, even if they think Daniel Jones is their quarterback, where's their O-line? Where's the receivers? What the hell are you doing with that cap space? I don't get it. I don't understand it. If you really think Jones is your quarterback, protection and weapons, that's the first thing you have to do. That's what the Cleveland Browns did this year. And I will say to credit to the Bengals, that's what they started to do as soon as they knew Burrow was coming. If you're a Giants fan, that should be frustrating to you. Where's my protection for my quarterback? Anyway, the Steelers should demolish them. And what I'm going to expect is Tony coming here and this high. Like, look at my team, what they did against this garbage team. They probably cannot play right now. And SEC.
Oh, okay. I like this. As the guy who was all about the Ravens beating the Dolphins in week 1 last year. Keep going.
It's how we beat them. But anyway.
Okay. Keep going. I'm going to allow it.
We'll get you in. We'll get you in, Tony.
Anyway, I think this should be. Actually, I'm expecting Big Ben to look decent in this game because I'm not expecting him to do too much. And that defense from the Giants is not that good. I actually think if the Steelers somehow manage to have a close game against the Giants, there's going to be trouble, like big time trouble. I think the Steelers, I'm higher than Quincy against for the Steelers, not as high as other people. But if you start 0-1 against the Giants or for some reason close, man, I'm expecting this game to be 30-10 at least.
All right, I'm hard on the Steelers. I'm just going to throw out there, if they barely beat the Giants, I'm not going to be that tough on them for that. I know what that situation is with Pittsburgh. I don't think that's going to be necessarily the indicator over them. I think they are going to beat the Giants. If they lose to the Giants, then, it's open season, Tony. I'm just going to.
Yeah. Oh, listen, if they lose to the Giants, I'm taking a week off because I don't even know. I'm not sure if I can handle it.
Right. So for me, Vegas has this one as Steelers by 6. I think it's more than that. I think, like you guys have all said, this is going to be a tale of two different teams going in two different directions. I think New York is obviously still rebuilding. They're thinking that Danny Dimes is a guy. We're going to have to see what Daniel Jones shows up week 1. Obviously, we've seen these cringy quotes coming from Dave Gettleman, and New York right now is just honestly a dumpster fire. I think we get to see how tough this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is in this game. I mean, we saw them last year after they brought in Minka. They really kind of turned it on, especially once they got the linebacker position solidified as well. But I think that this is an easy one for them. It's pretty much a layup. I mean, honestly, I see them rolling over these guys, and we're gonna have to deal with Tony next week. So I'm just prepping everyone in the audience. It's gonna happen.
You guys are
but without further ado, Tony, I'll definitely give you the floor to give your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, you guys are way higher on the Steelers in this game than I am. I'm going to sound like the hater. This is where Tony the hater shows up. Look, the Steelers in week 1 in the past couple of years, just not a good team in the last, really, you'd have to go back to the last time I think someone in the chat pointed this out. The Steelers did play kind of a layup on Monday Night Football on opening day, like 4 or 5 years ago against the Redskins or the Washington football team. Ben lit it up, threw 4 touchdowns. Right? I mean, that's what Steeler fans want to imagine that Monday night is going to look like. I unfortunately expect it to look much more like those 2 games they opened the season with against the Browns in 2017 and 2018. Those were 2 close games. Look, the Steelers, a 2017 team that would go on to be 13-3, that Steelers team, beat that Browns team who would go on to be, I believe, winless, beat them 21-18. Okay, I mean, that was a close game. That was a game where Antonio Brown had to bail them out on a 3rd and 15, and Ben just kind of heaved it up there. Otherwise, the Browns were getting the ball back with a chance to tie and or win. So, yeah. This is a team
I'm thinking about Deshaun Kaiser driving them down the field and tying the game.
Like I said, they would have had a chance. They would have had a chance to. But the next year, right, when you go back to the next year, now, again, this is, again, facing a then winless Browns, right, going back to the next year. They tied that game. The Steelers tied that game 21-21. So this is a team that just doesn't start hot. I mean, they don't. Last year, they lost to the Patriots. I believe it was 33-3. So, I'm expecting a game, here. And now, look, I know we're all going to talk about Ben and like how is Ben going to look, and I'm interested to see how Ben's going to look. But Ben on opening day never looks great. Again, you'd have to go back to that game against Washington, the last time he really put up big numbers on opening day without a bunch of turnovers. So I'll be interested to watch Ben and see how he does. I expect him to throw 200-ish yards, 250, and a touchdown and probably a pick because that's what he does. The Steelers, by the way, in this game are not going to have David DeCastro. That kind of came out right before we started. So they're going to miss their all-pro left guard, right guard, I should say. Steven Wisniewski, who they brought in the offseason, will come in. Now, Wisniewski's a vet, but, we've talked about this a lot this offseason about wanting to have that continuity on the offensive line. They're not going to have that anymore, right? Because they were going to return 5 guys who were all on the team last year. Now they're not. Now they're going to bring in a new guy in Wisniewski. So we'll see how that works out. Obviously, you bring Ben back. He's coming off of elbow surgery. You'd like to have David DeCastro out there for his first couple go-rounds. That's not going to happen on Monday night. We'll see. There are a ton of interesting questions around this game. I know a lot of these going to be really like, inside baseball or inside Steelers. But Mike Tomlin, for whatever reason, did this thing on the depth chart where he put or in a lot of places. Okay, instead of naming a starter, he literally put or like you would on a high school team. So at right tackle, who's going to start? Well, it says Zach Banner or Chukwueze Okorafor. And although
the Giants, why are they being this secretive?
We need all of it. We need
every nook and cranny.
Yeah, no. So Zach Banner probably starts on at right tackle there, but I'm interested to see who they actually play there and how much do the Steelers like to use a 6 offensive lineman set. How much of that do we see? How much it does not even matter who's starting at right tackle. At tight end, will it be Eric Ebron or Vance McDonald? It's an or. I'm less interested in who actually starts the game and more just how much do they try to use both of those guys at the same time, 2 tight end sets. We'll see about that. Kick returner. Who's it going to be? We don't know. It could be Anthony McFarland or Ray McCloud. Again, they don't even want the
question
Giants
marks
to know.
out there. You know what I mean?
The Giants know nothing. I mean, they literally know nothing about this team. I'm interested because the Steelers drafted Alex Highsmith in the 3rd round. Is he going to be a rotational edge guy or is that going to be Ola? I'm not sure just yet. And even in nickel, so the Steelers at backup inside linebacker, they converted Marcus Allen from safety to linebacker, and he might be the backup, or Ulysses Gilbert could be the backup. We're not sure yet. Again, we're not sure who our backup inside linebacker is. Now, that is an interesting one, though, because on nickel, you have Vince Williams, who's much more a run defender. Who are they going to take when he comes off the field, and he likely will in nickel? Will that be Marcus Allen coming on the field, the guy who just made the transition to linebacker, or will that be Ulysses Gilbert, a young guy who spent half of last season injured with a back injury? So we'll see what happens there. But look, this is a game. Yes, I agree. The Steelers should win this game, and they should win this one going away, just based on the talent that they have on the roster. But this is a team that notoriously starts slow, especially on the offensive side. I'm intrigued to see what they do at running back. Tomlin said today that Connor is the bell cow in this offense, but this is a guy who only got 20 carries in a game once last year, and a lot of that was because the Steelers just didn't run the ball a ton, and their offense was just off the field a lot. But still, this is a guy who spent the majority of the year hurt, and then when he finally did come back, he was getting like 5 or 6 carries a game, and he was splitting time with Benny Snell. I'm interested to see, are the Steelers, if they're ahead in this game and they are trying to run some clock, is this going to be the type of game where they don't take Connor out, they're running out the clock by just running Connor 3 downs and punting, or are they willing to work in a Benny Snell into that offense, willing to work in Anthony McFarland, because boy, this is a Steeler team that sees itself playing in January again. You need a healthy Connor, and and the way you get a healthy Connor is by starting early and not putting too much wear and tear on him in September so that he is healthy in January. And then on the defensive side, you guys talked about how good the defense was. I've talked about this all year about the regression that's going to happen here, and it's specifically going to happen with turnovers. The Steelers had 38 turnovers last year. Teams that have that many turnovers, that are top 5 in turnovers, the turnover luck just goes the other way. It just happens. Right? Regardless of your talent, you're just going to fall off. It's just a natural turnover luck. What does that turnover luck look like in 2020? Do they fall off from the top team to a top 10 team? We'll see. I think this is a game where the Steelers should be getting their turnovers. You got Daniel Jones, who had 12 interceptions last year. He led the league in fumbles last year. This is a Steeler defense to be able to pounce on that, get some fumbles, get an interception, multiple turnover game from the Steelers defense is what I'm looking for. And then, you have an offensive line that's bad. Daniel Jones was also pressured on 30% of his passes last year, which is an insanely high number. So, defensively, they should dominate. The questions around this game for me on the defensive side are twofold. One, you get a chance to test your run defense. And not to say the Steelers' run defense last year was bad. It wasn't bad. I think they ranked, 4th in rushing DVOA, 3rd in yards per carry. But they did have an accumulation of yards. It was 14th in total yards against in the running game. So Saquon is a chance for them to test that. They feel like they got better. Vince Williams instead of Mark Barron is certainly an upgrade. Tyson Alualu at nose tackle. You get Stephon Tuitt back in there. They brought in Chris Wormley from the Ravens to be a rotational guy. So they should be better, but this is a good test right off the bat to see. And then, of course, you have Devin Bush going into year 2. How does he look? In the passing game, I'm not Quincy, you were talking about this. Who even are the Giants wide receivers? Well, it's Golden Tate and it's Darius Slayton. And I'm not, Okay. I'm not too worried. Yeah, I'm not too worried. But there is one guy in this matchup who could present some problems for the Steelers, and that's Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram's a tight end who's more like a wide receiver. How do the Steelers want to match up with him? Is it going to be, you're going to put Mike Hilton on him? Because, boy, that's a size mismatch. You really probably don't want to do that. You probably want to put Terrell Edmonds on him because that's been the Steelers traditionally what they do against tight ends. They put the strong safety up against him. Edmonds not good in coverage, or at least he hasn't been to this point in his career. So I could see the Giants trying to pick on that matchup, especially on some play action, get Edmonds' head in the backfield, and then try to hit Ingram down the seam, something like that. Or potentially Cam Sutton is someone I think you could see in that role as well. But those are the only ways I think the Giants are going to have any success. If they get Saquon going and they start working some play action and start working Evan Ingram down the middle of the field. Otherwise, like you guys said, look, this should be a game where defensively the Steelers are able to shut down the Giants, and it's all about how long does it take Ben in that offense to get up to speed. I'm going to predict a much closer game than I think you guys will. I'm going to say the Steelers win something like 21-17, a game that just is far closer than it should be, and it feels like the Steelers are should be winning by more, but they never able to pull ahead. So I have the Steelers winning a unfortunately close game, which may mean bad things for the future.
I'm going to say one thing real quick here.
Mm-hmm.
If the Steelers do not win this game after how secretive they have been all training camp for putting oars on the depth chart, telling us Ryan Switzer was lighting it up and then they cut him
ripped.
All of this secretness, and the coach has been like, oh, we got somebody on the defensive line we don't want you to know about.
We know who it is now.
If they done all this mystery, all this secretness to lose week 1, they deserve to get dragged in the mud because
I'm sure they will. I can think of a certain YouTube show that will drag them through the mud.
I will gladly drag them through the mud because I see this stuff happening. I'm like, this is what Freddie Kitchens would do if he was still coaching the Browns right now. These are the games that Freddie Kitchens played last year.
Yeah.
I hate these kind of games that coaches play. I feel like they outcoach themselves sometimes when trying to be this secretive. But if they win, then it doesn't matter, right? Nobody's gonna care. But they lose, I'm gonna go off on them.
All right. So that brings us to the last matchup, which is the Burrow Boys versus the Los Angeles Chargers. I think this is an intriguing game, but instead of going first, I'm going to shift this to Tony.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this game in terms of the Bengals versus Chargers? Bengals are at home going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, and which Justin Herbert will not be playing. So this will be a Tyrod Taylor Los Angeles Chargers team.
It's an intriguing matchup, and much like I think Browns-Ravens, kind of similarities in how those two teams want to attack one another, with the linebacking cores being the problem there. I think when you look at the quarterback situations in both LA and Cincinnati, you have two quarterbacks who are just, they're surrounded by talent, right? I mean, you look at what LA brings to the table. Austin Eckler, a player who I think is one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. Justin Jackson, who's I think a very good 1-2 punch with him there. And then you got Keenan Allen, you got Mike Williams. If Hunter Henry is he healthy, by the way? Is he actually going to play in this game?
I believe Hunter Henry is, but Mike Williams is a game time decision. He actually went down. He's got some kind of shoulder injury. They're saying that he's a game time decision.
Interesting. That would actually,
his career is a game time decision so far at this point.
Yeah, he's been up and down. So if Hunter Henry actually plays, what a treat that would be. One time only. So yeah, I mean, look, Tyrod Taylor's got a bunch of weapons around him, but what can he do, right? Because if we ask Quincy about Tyrod Taylor and the Tyrod Taylor experience in Cleveland, I think we'd get a much different response than if we had someone from the Bills here, who to talk about Tyrod Taylor's time there. So which Tyrod Taylor are we going to get in this game? And I think, you can ask the same questions about Joe Burrow, right? Because you look at Joe Burrow's time in LSU and holy cow, I mean, the guy lit it up last year, but you're talking about a rookie in a limited mini camp. What can we realistically expect out of this guy in his first NFL start? And I look at the Chargers defense. I mean, this is a formidable opponent for Burrow to go up against in week one, because, you talk about the loss of Derwin James, and that's a huge loss for this team, but I still like their secondary. I really do. I mean, you got Casey Hayward, who was I think PFF had him as like the fifth best corner in the league last year, something like that. Chris Harris and Desmond King also. I mean, they bring Chris Harris in from Denver. I know Chris Harris had a down year last year, but this has been one of the better corners in the league throughout his career. Desmond King, his first 2 years, I believe PFF has had as the number one nickel corner in the league for his first 2 years. So he's a good player, although I know both those guys, when we talk about Harris and Desmond King, had down years last year. So they're hoping both those guys come up to the level we've seen them at previously. They're also going to the Chargers get back Nasir Adderley at free safety. Adderley was a guy who in the draft everyone was high on. He got a hamstring injury last year that kept him out. So I just like that secondary overall. It certainly provides some challenge there for Burrow. And then of course, you got the pass rush you got to deal with, and that's really going to be if anything is going to be the Achilles heel in this game for Cincinnati, it's going to be the pass rush, because we've talked so much on this podcast about the problems that Cincinnati has on the offensive line. And boy, week one you're going up against Melvin Ingram and you're going up against Joey Bosa. How much time does Burrow have, and how much time how much is he under pressure, and is he forced to get rid of the ball before he wants to? Does that lead him to some silly mistakes and things like that? That could be the difference in this game. I think this is going to be a close one though, because I don't know what to expect out of either quarterback. I will say this about Tyrod Taylor. He was in LA last year. He was a Charger last year. So in that way, I think the Chargers are being smart and trying to keep that continuity, not forcing not forcing in Herbert. And the Bengals are not going to have that same luxury, right? You're not going to put Ryan Finley in there, again, right, because he's got the continuity, right? Who cares about the continuity with Ryan Finley? Let's get Burrow in there and see what's going to happen. So I'm not trying to criticize Cincinnati for that. I just think I don't know what's going to happen with Taylor versus Burrow. And I think this is a game you can basically boil down to very simply which quarterback. I mean, you could boil a lot of NFL games down to this. So it's not like, some kind of divine take here, but whatever quarterback plays better, that team's going to win this game. I think if Tyrod Taylor goes out there and plays well, they win. The Chargers win this game. And if Burrow goes out there and lights it up like he's done in training camp at times, I think this is a Bengals win. And all of a sudden, Burrow mania is going to get another level of hype.
Definitely. Sonny, what's your take on this game?
This game is set up to be fun. And the reason, one of the main things that I want to see is those two really good pass rusher, one of them being Joey Bosa, elite, against, I'm hoping Joey Bosa goes where Jonah Williams is, because I want to see how Jonah Williams holds against a guy like Joey Bosa. And the other thing is, the other strong portion for the Chargers is the corners, right? Safeties, they're okay, obviously, because Derwin James is not there. But the corners are expensive. And you can argue that's also the strongest position for the Bengals. We had talked about them having the best receiving core, one of the top 10 receiving core, top 5 in the league. So that for me is a good matchup. The one thing is, I don't know, I think that the Bengals have the opportunity is feed Joe Mixon, because I think that is a mismatch with the Chargers. I think the Chargers D-line is pretty good. It's solid, especially on the outside. But once you go to the other once you pass that first line, that was where Darren James is going to be missed, because Darren James would have been the enforcer coming downhill and punishing that running back. So it's funny because where the Bengals excel, that's exactly where the Chargers defense excel. Now, if I flip it to the other side, the weakest part of the Bengals, in my opinion, is that defense, especially in the secondary. But right now, I like Tyrod. I like Tyrod. I still don't believe in that O-line. And I think Reader's going to be a factor. Even though Reader is more of a run-stuffing guy, I don't know if they have anybody that can just hold Reader down. And then I feel like Dunlap and Gino are also going to push. So I think the Bengals can win this game if they can provide pressure. Because although I think the Chargers have really good receivers, right? Although Mike Williams gets hurt in every game, right? But overall, the receiving core is really, really good. If they provide pressure to Tyrod, Tyrod's not that quarterback. I mean, most quarterbacks cannot handle pressure, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But Tyrod also gets antsy and starts, going too quick with the ball. And in that offense is more like develop the play, hit the big play, accurate play action, all that. So I feel like the Bengals can win this game and both sides in the trenches, contain the Bosa and Ingram, right? Protect Burrow. And then on the other side, that's not a good O-line. So make it hell for them in that O-line. And if they do that, the Bengals win. If they don't, if for some reason they allow Bosa to completely destroy the O-line, now it's going to be a bad day for Burrow, right? Because as a rookie with that much pressure, that good of a pass rusher in your face, it's not great. It's not great. So, but I'm expecting actually the Bengals to pull this one.
You're saying Bengals win?
I think the Bengals win because I think how I see the Bengals, and Ace can also tell us what he sees. I think the Bengals are going to feed Mixon to draw play action and then hit Mixon. I'm sorry. Then Burrow will have time to hit the receivers. Mm-hmm. And I think my biggest problem with the Chargers is that O-line. And I think the Bengals D-line is strong enough to break that O-line.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to say a lot of the same things that Sonny said. One, I do like Tyrod Taylor. I know you asked me about Tyrod earlier on in the conversation, but I like Tyrod Taylor a lot. I think Tyrod's going to be a pretty solid veteran. I think he's always been a pretty solid veteran. And I think that's kind of always been what he's good at, is kind of moving around, getting the ball where he's at. He had a bad fit in Cleveland, but like every quarterback that played for Hugh Jackson under that reign had a bad fit in Cleveland. So, just to be fair to Tyrod there, I think he got dealt a bad hand there. That being said, Tyrod Taylor's kind of the guy you want around when you want to christen a new quarterback in. Famous for christening in Baker Mayfield quite nice in week 2 against the Jets. This is a home game. So this is a Chargers team that's going to have to travel across the country to play this Cincinnati team, a Cincinnati team that they may or may not be underrating, and a Cincinnati team that's going to be a lot better than people think, especially on that defensive line. So I actually think that this is going to be a win for Cincinnati. They're going to come in with a lot of momentum to kind of finish this season out. Well, to start this season out. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Start this season out. And I think they're going to win in a little bit of a convincing fashion. I think they actually take this by a couple of scores here, and they're going to be kind of the talk of the league heading into Thursday Night Football.
And that's a Thursday game between the Browns and Bengals, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Which I have an interesting prediction for. But we're not going to do that till next week.
So for me, I think the more and more news has been coming out on this game. This was a game initially that I was kind of worried about. But one thing that gave me some comfort was at first, months ago before Hard Knocks came out, I thought that this could be a game that Justin Herbert was actually playing. But given, like you guys said, Tyrod is a very solid quarterback. There's no better situation to put a rookie quarterback in than learning the ropes from Tyrod, a guy who's been in that position as a backup, has been a starter before, can really teach Justin Herbert a lot about this league. And after watching Hard Knocks, honestly, it was quite obvious that Justin Herbert was not starting week 1. And this was a guy that was kind of giving away some plays and stuff on cadences. But back to the main point, I think once I saw Derwin James go down, I kind of was like, oh, okay, that's a very good sign for us. You're never happy to see anyone get injured. I'm a big Derwin James fan, but for me, for week 1, I was just like, wow, that helps us a lot. And then you see, I think before that, actually, Mike Williams goes down. And it's like, oh, wow, like if he's out week 1, that really makes it a lot easier for our defense to really keen in on Keenan Allen as well as Hunter Henry as well. Having those guys that can stretch the field, that was scary for me, especially with Trey Waynes being out. So for me, I think that those were two things that kind of helped me out. But then they said, obviously, Tyrod is going to be a starter. So then some of my confidence went away. But the more that I think about this matchup, the more that I think about the circumstances that surround it. And I think I started to really shift once I interviewed a Chargers reporter from Sports Illustrated that said, hey, they literally have absolutely nothing on Joe Burrow. There's no preseason games. There's no nothing. If we don't, they have absolutely no idea what Joe Burrow is going to do coming out. And I think that really plays into the Bengals' hand because, with Tyrod, one thing that I did find out is that the Chargers actually are moving towards a system where they can utilize mobile quarterbacks. Obviously, Phillip Rivers, not a mobile guy. They're looking to do some more of that with Tyrod and surprisingly, Justin Herbert. But I don't think it's going to be that much different that the Bengals aren't going to be able to game plan for it. So obviously you have Keenan Allen. The biggest thing that I'm worried about, you guys mentioned it, Joey Bosa. How are we going to block him? I think Sonny mentioned Jonah Williams, and Jonah Williams has actually been working with Sam Hubbard in terms of getting some intel about Joey Bosa. Obviously, these guys played with each other at Ohio State, so that's something that's very interesting. And Jonah Williams has been quietly the talk of camp. Everybody's been talking about Jonah Williams. He transformed his body from the rookie year to now. He's looking quite stout, and he's saying that he's going to use this week 1 as a measuring stick. And I mean, why not? You're going against Joey Bosa, possibly Melvin Ingram at times, and those are going to be two guys that are just going to give us fits, right? And so this is going to be a big measuring stick for our offensive line to see how much they have improved from last season to this season. And I think that I'm excited to see that. I'm also scared as well because Joey Bosa can wreck games. And then you also look at the defensive line. You forget that they signed Linval Joseph, who's a defensive tackle that's very good at stopping the run, and he's going to be a guy that they're going to have to use in order to try to stop Joe Mixon. But the way that I see this thing actually working out is that Mixon just got this new contract. He's been anxious to prove to our fan base and this team that he was well worth this money. And so I think that Joe Mixon is going to have a big game week 1. I'm not going to say that he's going to run for 200 yards, but I don't think it's out of the question that Joe Mixon runs for 120 yards, maybe a touchdown in there. Joseph Burrow is the most intriguing part about this. There's several intriguing parts because then you also have AJ Green's back. Like AJ's back.
Yeah, right.
We haven't been able to say that in about 2 years, basically. So AJ Green's going to be back, and he's catching passes from Burrow. The other thing that's crazy is the depth chart just came out for us a couple hours ago. John Ross is penciled in as the number 2 receiver. So they're going to have AJ Green, John Ross, Tyler Burrow in the slot. And a lot of people forget the first game of the season last year, John Ross exploded against the Seattle Seahawks. And so for me, I think that that's definitely an intriguing matchup because the Chargers have great corners. You talk about Chris Harris. This was one of the guys that a few years ago when he was in Denver, AJ Green came out with his top 5 corner list. Chris Harris Jr. was on that list. And you also talk about the other corners that they have. The Bengals receivers versus the Chargers corners. I think that that's very intriguing. I also want to see if Kenneth Murray is going to play or not. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but I think that Joe Burrow, can get his first win of the season. And I think it's going to be not necessarily a shock for the league, but I don't think that they expected the Bengals to win their first game of the season. So I'm going Bengals over the Chargers. I'm going to say 28-24 Bengals.
I had a 27-24 is what I'm expecting. A really good game to watch. And again, it for me is essentially Bengals control the trenches, they're going to win. If they let Joey Bosa lose, then it's going to flip quick to the other side. Because as long as Burrow is clean, I'm not saying that he's going to turn it up because they do have good corners. But the combination of Mixon getting pounded, play action, I think that will help. And he will do just enough to win that game. I look, Tyrod Taylor. We drafted Tyrod Taylor. I like Tyrod Taylor overall. I just think literally my reasoning for having the Bengals is I hate the O line for the Chargers.
I mean, they did upgrade a little bit. They upgraded a little bit with Bulaga and
I got you. But the
Try-
Bengals D line is good. We're not talking about and so they upgraded a little bit, but the Bengals D line, specifically the D line, is that much better than the offensive line. Like if the Bengals D line doesn't get his sacks, then that's worrisome. I would say.
I cannot wait to see Geno Atkins with DJ Reader, Mike Daniels, Carlos Dunlap, Carl Lawson, Sam Hubbard. I'm excited to see that. That's going to be pretty fun. We also ended up trading for a gentleman by the name of Chris Covington. I think that we traded for him with the Broncos or something like that. Another big solid body. So I'm excited to see what this defense is going to do at the linebacking core. I think that's where we have most of our questions. It looks like from the depth chart that came out today, it looks like the two starting linebackers are actually going to be Jermaine Pratt from last season that I forgot to mention when we talked about linebackers. He actually came on last season. Very comfortable with him. And then also Josh Bynes as well is going to be starting there. Right. So
you got a future Hall of Famer starting and
future Hall of Famer Joshua Bynes. He's going for 10 tackles to start the season out. I'm just kidding.
The one thing about this game though for Burrow, right? Is I wouldn't get just to and I don't want to jump on like the Burrow hype train here, but like if Joe Burrow does struggle, I do think Bengals fans should understand this is a tough matchup for him because look, he's got to adjust to NFL speed right off the top against one of the best pass rushing duos in the NFL right now. So it takes him a little longer, right? He's not going to be processing plays as quickly as he will, later in the season. And if it's going to take him a while, that's going to give Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram a chance to tee off on him. So, but you have to figure, like you were talking about, Ace, if this is going to be a game where Zach Taylor is going to want to figure a lot of Joe Mixon into this, a lot of easy throws for him, and try to get him going that way. And you're not going to have a lot of 7-step drops here where he's trying to read a defense and figure out where his read is, because I think that can be a recipe for disaster for Burrow.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. I think definitely with Joe Burrow being the only rookie that's really starting as of week 1, at least, I think that is definitely understandable that some people would kind of say, hey, you guys may not win this game. And that's perfectly fine. The Bengals may not win this game. But I think what our fans are really looking for this season and out of Joe Burrow is to see if the hype is real. Are we going to be in some of these games? Are they going to be excitable? And I think based off of the things that I have heard from Bengals players, AJ Green included, it seems like Joe Burrow is not like a rookie. I don't know if that's just media hype. I don't know if it's just talk. I don't think that they would put that on him with him being a rookie this year. But there's a lot of guys saying that Joe Burrow, it doesn't seem like he's a rookie. The way that he carries himself, the way that he's able to check out of things, the way that he's able to command that offense. He already is the leader. A lot of people don't realize that, but he's already the leader. He came in. And AJ Green said something that was very interesting to me because usually AJ Green doesn't really give props out unless it's really warranted. And one thing that he said that kind of made me say, okay, this guy might be legit is that he said that Joe Burrow is going to be good for the next 15 years, not the next year, not the next 5 years, not the next 10 years, the next 15. So somehow they know something that we don't, but obviously with teams not playing against other teams, it's hard to really measure where Joe Burrow is going, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen for sure.
I'm excited for week 1. We've heard so much in this offseason, and I've talked about it a lot, right? The kind of how much is the COVID stuff going to affect what happens, especially early on in the year, right? A team like the Bengals, who you expect early on is going to struggle because they're working in Burrow, they're working in all these the new pieces. The Browns working in an entirely new coaching staff, and this team having to adjust to that. We've talked today about potentially, Burrow goes out there and potentially wins week 1 or potentially, and by the way, the Browns aren't just working in a new coaching staff. They're going up against a team that was the best regular season team we had last year and a very stable organization overall. If the Browns pull off that upset, right? Or if the Bengals pull off that upset, you can throw that continuity stuff out. And I'm interested to see that because how much of that is true. I think I read an article earlier today from Kevin Clark on The Ringer about that. He was talking to a lot of general managers, talked to Kevin Colbert of the Steelers about, hey, what do you expect this season? And a lot of people just said, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the top executives just saying, look, I don't know. We keep saying that continuity matters. We keep saying that, and that's been a general theme of this offseason. But week 1, we're going to find out because there are matchups like we've talked about where if Burrow comes up with a win, throw the continuity stuff out, right? The continuity stuff didn't matter as much as we thought. If the Browns pull off that win in week 1, okay, throw the continuity stuff out, right? Stefanski went in, without an offseason, 14 padded practices, and got that team playing on a level to beat in Baltimore the best regular season team we had last year, who didn't go through a ton of offseason changes. So I'm interested to watch some of that. I mean, by the way, I shouldn't throw the Steelers out of this, right? Because like, if the Steelers were to lose to Joe Judge and the Giants on Monday Night Football, okay, you got Mike Tomlin. I mean, one of the most stable franchises in the NFL, in the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they lose to this Giants team, you know what I mean? Like, throw the continuity stuff out. I'm tired. I don't want to hear about it anymore.
You know, I want to add an interesting thing to that continuity argument, because I've been thinking about this for a while now. Because the Browns in this division, have gotten the most flack for having the least amount of continuity, especially for this season. And, you know, there are reasons I do think that's a legitimate argument. You know, to shorten off season, you know, not as much time to install the offense, and things aren't going to be finished to start the season. But I think we've kind of skipped past some things when we talk about continuity, because we look at the Ravens and the Steelers on the most part, and we see the outside, the exterior of it. It looks the same, right? It's still, you know, the same GM, the same head coach, the same offensive coordinator, the same defensive coordinator. But if you start to look inside the guts of both of those teams, you start to realize there's some significant changes going on in Baltimore and in Pittsburgh to that offense. The fact that the Ravens are only keeping 2 tight ends on their depth chart, on their roster for the 53-man roster, tells me that's not going to be the same exact offense as last year, right? That offense they ran last year, a lot of tight ends, a lot of running. You're keeping less tight ends, more wide receivers. That tells me something about the philosophy of this team changing, and that they're going to switch to a different style of offense. And I remember I said this earlier in the offseason that, hey, trying to add more complications to the offense could end up being a trickier install than installing a simpler offense than what the team had the year before. We talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're bringing back the same guys. Big Ben, like, all that continuity is there. But the question is this offense really the same thing that they ran last year with Big Ben in it? You know, is it going to be the Mason Rudolph, 30 passes, you know, kind of 30 pass offense? Or is it going to be the classic Big Ben offense? We don't know. I don't think they can just go out there.
The Steelers aren't going to tell us, by the way.
Yeah, they're not going to tell us. They're going to tell us or between those two. But, you know, it's a huge question mark about what kind of offense is the Steelers going to run. Like, what are they running out there? And then when you look at continuity, Big Ben's there, but, you know, outside of Juju and maybe James Conner, who really has experience catching the ball from Big Ben out there? It's all new to him. There's going to be, week 1, three offensive linemen that are going to be in new positions or in new places than they were at the start of last year. You know, there's a lot of question marks with even the teams with a ton of continuity. When I look at it from the Browns' perspective, I get why that narrative's there. I also think that narrative could be a little bit overdone at this point, because if you look at the guys that the Browns brought in, they're guys who ran that system that they're running right now, you know, in their previous plays. Even Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, they ran a very similar offense at the back end of 2018. So it's not a completely new offense that they're running here. It's just, you know, it's just going to be a little bit different. So I look at the continuity stuff and I take it with a grain of salt, but I also have to say that, you know, we need to have a broader, a deeper look when we say about continuity than just same head coach, same GM. That's continuity. Throw it out the window.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Totally get what you're saying from the Steelers, especially on an offensive perspective. And I've talked about this, right? I mean, that's the problem I had with Ben early in the year. He's got to work in Deontay Johnson. He's got to work in James Watt. He's got to work in all these new guys. I don't think that's just. I don't think, you know. Yes, Ben's been around this team forever, but he hasn't thrown to these guys forever. He's thrown to Juju and he's thrown to Vance McDonald, and that's.
And the key thing about Ben and what makes Ben so dangerous is that Ben expects very specific stuff from his wide receivers on choice routes. That's why him and Antonio Brown were absolutely unstoppable in their prime, because as much as they disagreed off the field, they knew what they were going to do every time Ben rolled out or every time Ben needed something. That's going to take time to develop. Like, those are the things that take forever to develop, especially with young wide receivers. And that's just going to be interesting to see Ben with everything that he's trying to recover from, on top of having that, you know, those new players there to try to learn those things. That's why he doesn't like rookie wide receivers, because this is not a rookie wide receiver friendly offense. And it's just going to be interesting to see, you know, where these continuity arguments go at the end of the first 4 weeks, because I think not us here in this video, but I think just in general, the NFL talk sphere has been kind of broad with the whole continuity argument. It has rubbed me the wrong way at times.
No, that's definitely a valid point. So, hope you guys enjoyed watching the AFC North Talk. Definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel. This is where you're going to hear us give our takes for our teams and our previews week to week. You can catch us now Tuesdays from 5:45. We'll probably go around 6:45, a little bit over, but you can look forward to seeing us now at this time, same time next week. So before we get out of here, definitely want to shout out Sonny. Be sure to follow SZG Sports on YouTube. Tony, I'll go ahead and shift it to you for your outro.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. Of course, you can find me here on AFC North Talk. Happy to do this every week with you guys, talk AFC North, although I'm not going to be very happy if the Steelers get upset on Monday night. I'm going to be upset on Tuesday. And then you can find me on Locked On Steelers weekly. It's going to be, I think, Thursday during the season now, because obviously Tuesday we'd have to record Monday night. So look for me up there, Tony Thursdays on Locked On Steelers. Find that wherever you find podcasts.
Quincy.
Yeah, make sure you find me at youtube.com/Quincy Carrier. If you're too lazy to do that, just Google Quincy Carrier. If you're too lazy to do that, there's a link in the description of this video. So do one of those 3 things. Also, before you subscribe to any of us, subscribe to this. If you ain't subscribed and you're watching live, what's wrong with you? Come on, just do it. Hit the like button, subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 before the season starts, so help us out. Don't be rude. Don't be a bunch of jerks. Subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, definitely subscribe to the channel for sure. AFC North Talk, we're closing in on those thousands, and I think that there is actually something that I proposed on Twitter. I haven't ran it across Tony yet, but if we get to 2,000 subscribers, I'm gonna get Tony basically a James Washington jersey, and I'm gonna make him wear it on this channel. So please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for sure. But you can also find me at New Stripe City on YouTube with all the hottest Bengals takes. But this has been AFC North Talk. Thank you guys for listening.